The earliest Christians responded to Jesus' teachings radically. In the church described in the Acts of the Apostles, believers held possessions in common, distributed resources according to need, and rejected private wealth as the organizing principle of human life. The Greek word koinonia implied not merely a fellowship, but a deep material and spiritual sharing of life together. Christian history had repeatedly returned to this vision through purist movements, such as spiritual Franciscans, Russian non-possessors, monastic communities, the Catholic worker movement, the Bruderhof, and other movements that saw accumulation and discipleship as fundamentally incompatible. Seen in this light, the parable of the talents becomes deeply relevant to capitalism. Capitalism, especially in its industrial and corporate forms, is built on the endless multiplication of capital. Wealth becomes not a means for human flourishing, but an end in itself. Under capitalism, labor is commodified. Workers produce value they do not own, while profits flow upward to those who control capital and property. The system structurally rewards extraction. Corporations are legally obligated to maximize shareholder profit, often regardless of social harm, environmental destruction, or human suffering. Success belongs to those who can make money reproduce itself more efficiently. And this logic mirrors the master's economy in the parable. He reaps where he did not sow. That is the language of surplus extraction. Workers create wealth, yet owners accumulate disproportionate gain. The servant who refuses participation threatens not merely the master's profits, but the legitimacy of the system itself. In capitalist societies, those who refuse the logic of competition, endless growth, and accumulation are often marginalized in similar ways, economically, politically, or socially cast out, or in this case, ostracized to where there is gnashing of teeth. This is why critics of capitalism argue that inequality is not an accident of the system, but its very engine. Capital requires wage labor, debt scarcity, and competition. Depends upon a permanent class of people whose insecurity generates profit for the others. The wealthy thrive not despite inequality, but because of it. Modern Marxist analysis names this process exploitation, which means that workers are paid less than the value they produce, and the difference, that being surplus value, is retained by owners as profit. The result is not only economic inequality, but spiritual deformation. Capitalism trains people to see one another as competitors rather than neighbors, consumers rather than image bearers of God. It manufactures desire endlessly, cultivating what Scripture calls the lust of the eyes. Human dignity becomes secondary to market value. Even creation itself becomes a raw material for profit. Forests, oceans, laborers, entire nations consumed in the pursuit of accumulation. Another way this happens is by objectifying and alienating workers. Karl Marx argues that capitalism alienates workers from the products they create. But what exactly does that mean? To understand this, it helps to compare capitalism with earlier modes of production. Throughout history, whether in small communal societies, slave societies, feudal systems, capitalism, or even the communist society Marx envisioned, people have organized labor in different ways. In a hunter-gatherer community, for example, labor is primarily directed toward meeting immediate needs. People work not only to sustain themselves, but also to help support the members of their group. Because production occurs on a small scale, there is little emphasis on accumulating surplus wealth. The main goal is simply survival and the continuation of communal life. Under capitalism, however, the purpose of work changes. People still need food and shelter and other necessities, but the production process is driven by profit rather than direct human need. The direct goal is not to get food, but rather to save money. This is called a profit motive. Whether someone manufactures goods or provides services, their labor is ultimately organized around the generating income for the owner of the business. As a result, the workers can become disconnected from the actual purpose of their daily activities. The service they provide or the product they create is no longer an end in itself. It becomes a means of increasing profit. According to Marx, this creates a contradiction within the worker. On one hand, the worker is engaged in a practical activity, making something useful or performing a service. On the other hand, the broader objective of that activity is enrichment of someone else. This separation between the worker's effort and the ultimate purpose of production contributes to a sense of alienation. When a worker sells their labor for a wage, the employer gains control over that portion of the worker's time. He wants to own you in the amount of time you are selling him. During working hours, the worker is expected to function primarily as an employee rather than as a fully realized individual. Personal concerns, emotions, relationships, and experiences are often treated as irrelevant to the labor process. The worker's identity becomes tied to their role within the workplace rather than to their broader humanity. For Marx, alienation operates on multiple levels. Economically, workers are separated from their products of their labor because the value they create is largely appropriated by the owners of capital. At the same time, there is a deeper existential form of alienation. Workers become objects within the production process, valued for their productive capacity rather than recognized as complete human beings. In fact, you are not supposed to be human at all, that being the things that affect you from the outside world. If you are sad about international conflicts, personal relationships, or if you get jumped at the train stop, the moment you clock in, you become not only alienated from the product of your labor, but also from your own being. In this sense, capitalism alienates people not only from what they produce, but also from their own human nature. Again, human dignity becomes secondary. The gospel points toward another possibility, though. In the Sufi tradition about an angel carrying a torch in one hand and a bucket of water in the other, the angel is asked what they are doing. The angel replies, "With the torch, I will burn down the mansions of heaven. And with the water, I will extinguish the fires of hell." The point is profound. If there were no reward and no punishment, would we still love God? Would we still care for one another? Would we still pursue justice? That question sits beneath Matthew 25 as well. Perhaps Jesus is not asking how efficiently we can multiply wealth. Perhaps he is asking what kind of God we believe in and what kind of world that belief creates. If we imagine God as harsh, transactional, and obsessed with productivity, we will build societies based by fear, coercion, and accumulation. But if God is abundance, mercy, and shared life, then faith must take material form in solidarity, generosity, and liberation. This is why James insists that faith without works is dead, and why revolutionaries like Assata Shakur could similarly argue that theory without practice is meaningless. Belief always manifests itself materially. Systems reveal theology. Economics reveal morality. So the parable ultimately confronts us with a choice. Do we participate unquestioningly in systems that reward extraction and punish compassion? Or do we risk living differently, even at a personal cost? To follow Christ may require refusing the logic of exploitation altogether, rejecting systems that degrade human beings based on race, class, nationality, or labor, resisting economies that value profit over life, and recovering the ancient Christian conviction that the goods of creation belong to all people, not merely to those powerful enough to accumulate them. In that sense, Matthew 25 is not simply about investment. It is about fear, power, and the image of God reflected in our economic life. And perhaps the most faithful servant is not necessarily the one who multiplies capital, but the one who is courageous enough to expose the cruelty hidden beneath the demand for endless growth. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the second episode. If you haven't already listened to the first episode, be sure to get caught up. We'll be jumping into the histories of capitalism and how it is closely knit with Christian tradition in the next episode. So be sure to stick around for that one. So, see you in the next episode.